The Grand Galactic Assembly convened in the heart of the Interstellar Coalition, Zarathis Prime. A world of towering obsidian spires and pulsating energy fields, its central hall gleamed with the cold glow of 1,000 suspended platforms, each holding representatives of the known universe. The vast chamber, carved from an asteroid the size of a moon, radiated a quiet menace. It was a place where the fate of entire civilizations had been decided, where species had been erased from history with the mere flick of a judge's wrist. Today, humanity stood trial. At the center of the assembly, the great holographic projection of the Sol system spun slowly, bathing the chamber in a ghostly blue light. The Earth, fragile and insignificant among the swirling constellations, bore the mark of final judgment: extinction. Atop the highest dais, where the rulers of the Galactic Coalition observed from thrones of shifting plasma, stood High Chancellor Threxazun of the Vorkai Dominion. He was a towering figure, his 4 arms folded in a display of silent authority. His exoskeletal frame shimmered with a bioluminescent glow, the sign of his species' ancient dominion over the stars. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber, as though it did not come from his throat, but from the very bones of the universe itself. "The human species has failed," Threxazun intoned, his mandibles clicking in disdain. "A species of war, of chaos, of insubordination, a threat to the stability of this galaxy. For the crimes of aggression, for defying the order we have established, you must be purged." A wave of agreement rippled through the assembly. The murmurs of 100 species filled the chamber, their voices layered in a cacophony of judgment. Beneath them, bound by gravitational shackles that pressed against their very bones, the last human emissaries knelt on the lowest platform, the remnants of a once proud species. Their bodies bore the scars of war, their uniforms tattered, but their eyes, oh, their eyes still burned. One among them raised his head. Commander Elias Carter, last representative of the Terran Defense Coalition, met the cold, inhuman gazes of the assembly with something none of them expected: defiance. He was a man forged in the fires of war, his face carved by hardship. A jagged scar ran from his temple to his jaw, a reminder of the battles fought beyond the rim of known space. His eyes, sharp as broken glass, reflected not desperation nor fear, but something older, something the alien lords did not understand: certainty. A slow, mirthless smile curled his lips. "You think this is over?" Carter said, his voice low but steady. Silence fell upon the chamber. The High Chancellor tilted his head, his mandibles twitching. "You speak as if you still have hope." Carter exhaled, shaking his head. "Not hope," he murmured. "You don't understand what happens when you push humanity to the edge." The weight of his words settled over the assembly like a shroud. The Vorkai, the Kithari, the Thalshar, all species that had stood as judges and executioners of lesser beings, shifted uneasily. The moment stretched, brittle as ice, and then the universe outside began to change. Far beyond the walls of the Grand Chamber, the fleets of the Galactic Coalition hung over Earth like vultures circling a dying beast. Hundreds of warships, their weapons primed, their commanders awaiting the final order. No escape, no resistance. The sentence had already been passed. But deep in the void, beyond the reach of their watchful eyes, something was stirring. At the edge of the galaxy, in the shadow of a dead star, hidden from every sensor, lay the last secret of humankind. A facility buried within the frozen husk of a forgotten world. A place where the rules of nature had been rewritten, where minds had abandoned the constraints of the possible. Within its depths, an energy pulsed, something not of this universe, something that should not exist. And in the darkness, a single hand reached forward, a button was pressed, the future of the galaxy shifted, and on Zarathis Prime, as the assembly held its breath, Elias Carter's smile widened. "You never should have given us a reason." Outside the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly, the execution of Earth was already in motion. The Coalition's warships, an armada spanning the void, like an impenetrable net, encircled the planet with surgical precision. A fleet of leviathans, their hulls bristling with weapons capable of reducing continents to smouldering wastelands, drifted in eerie silence. The order had not yet been given, but the verdict was clear. No human vessel would escape. No resistance would arise. Humanity was trapped, or so they believed. Beyond the furthest mapped systems, past the dying embers of forgotten stars, something else stirred in the abyss. It had been hidden for decades, an experiment shrouded in secrecy, buried beneath layers of deception, a project so forbidden that its very existence had been erased from Coalition records. The species of the galaxy had always feared human unpredictability, but what they never realized was that humanity had never played by their rules. When the noose tightened, when extinction loomed, humanity did not surrender. It adapted. In the heart of an artificial planetoid, deep within a laboratory carved into the frozen remains of a dead world, a group of scientists stood before the culmination of their life's work. A pulsating core of energy, held in suspension by gravimetric fields, thrummed with an unnatural pulse. It was not like any reactor, nor any technology known to the Coalition. It radiated something else, something beyond even human comprehension. Dr. Adrian Vasquez, chief architect of the project, stared at the swirling mass of unstable energy. His face, once sharp and severe, was now lined with exhaustion. This was not an act of desperation. It was the inevitable result of humanity's survival instinct. His fingers hovered over the final command sequence. Behind him, his assistant, a woman barely containing her trembling hands, whispered, "Are we sure this will work?" Vasquez let out a slow breath. No. Silence. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. The final calculations had been run. The models tested. Every simulation had yielded the same outcome. This was the only way. "Activate the sequence," Vasquez commanded, his voice steady. A single keystroke. The pulse of energy shifted. No longer chaotic but purposeful, controlled. Reality itself trembled. For the briefest moment, the laws that bound the universe frayed at the edges. The station's instruments flickered, unable to comprehend what was unfolding. Then, the void answered. A ripple spread through the cosmic fabric, distorting time and space. Something ancient, something beyond the understanding of any known species, had been awakened, and at the center of it all, humanity stood ready. On Zarathis Prime, as the Galactic Assembly basked in their assured victory, as their fleets surrounded Earth with merciless precision, a ripple in the void heralded the beginning of something new. A silence fell across the command decks of Coalition warships. Then came the first anomaly. Sensors registered impossible readings. Data flooded the consoles, full of contradictions and impossibilities. The fleet captains barked orders, demanding explanations. And then, as if the universe itself had exhaled, the stars around them flickered. Something was coming, and no force in the galaxy could stop it. The fabric of space twisted. It was not a warp jump, nor a hyperspace rupture. It was something else, something that did not conform to the known laws of the universe. At first, the Coalition's fleet commanders dismissed the anomalies as sensor, glitches, mere interference from the gravity wells of nearby planets. But then the distortions grew. The void rippled. The stars wavered like reflections in disturbed water. And then the universe itself tore open. It was not an explosion, not the blinding flash of a nova. It was an absence, a dark wound in reality, a void so absolute that it devoured all light, all readings, all sense of existence. From that abyss, they emerged. Not ships, not in the way the Coalition understood them. The first silhouette slid into existence, its form a shifting paradox of darkness and movement. It was vast, larger than the greatest dreadnoughts of the Vorkai, its surface devoid of markings, of seams, of anything resembling traditional starship architecture. It did not emit energy signatures, did not reflect scans. It was simply there, an absence given form. More followed. silent, impossible. They did not move like traditional spacecraft. They did not accelerate. They did not adjust trajectory. They simply appeared, as if they had always been there, waiting beyond the veil of perception. And at the heart of this shadowed armada, something even greater loomed. The abyss. Its form defied reason. It was less a ship, more a phenomenon. Its hull, if it could even be called that, did not reflect light. It absorbed it. A darkness, deeper than the void itself, as if it had been carved from the very fabric of night. A pulse echoed through the vacuum, not in sound, but in something deeper. A reverberation that sent shudders through every coalition vessel, through every mind capable of feeling fear. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy felt the presence of something that did not belong. On the bridge of the Vorokai flagship, High Chancellor Threxazun's mandibles twitched involuntarily. His species had conquered entire star. Systems had stood at the apex of interstellar civilization for longer than humanity had existed. Yet, as he stared at the impossible fleet before him, he felt something his kind had not known in generations. Dread. "Report!" he barked, his forearms gripping the control interface. But the readings made no sense. No propulsion signatures, no energy emissions, no life signs. The ships simply should not exist. A junior officer stammered, his bioluminescent patterns flickering in distress. We are detecting gravitational distortions, but they are inconsistent. They phase in and out of reality. Our targeting systems cannot lock onto them." Another voice, trembling, broke through the bridge comms. "High Chancellor, they are watching us." A chill ran through Threxazun's hardened exoskeleton. Then the comms flickered. A voice, clear and unyielding, echoed across every coalition channel. "You condemned us." It was human. It was Elias Carter. "You pushed us to the brink. You thought we had no future." Across the fleet, warning alarms blared as entire systems shut down. Coalition warships, each a marvel of interstellar engineering, were paralyzed in an instant. But when you took everything from us, we built something new. The first strike was silent. A coalition battleship, proud and vast, disintegrated without warning. No explosion, no energy signature. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, as if it had never existed. Panic erupted across the fleet. They tried to fire. They had no time. The human fleet did not attack in conventional terms. There were no missile barrages, no laser fire. Instead, the void itself twisted around coalition vessels, swallowing them into nothingness. On Zerathis Prime, in the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly, silence reigned. And for the first time in recorded history, the rulers of the known universe understood what it meant to fear the unknown. High Chancellor, Threxazun had faced war before. He had led the Vorkai Dominion in battles that had spanned centuries. He had commanded fleets that had burned rebellious worlds, crushed insurrections, and silenced the defiant. He had watched civilizations kneel before the coalition's might, had seen species wiped from history with nothing more than a single decree. Yet, at this moment, as his fleet crumbled into the abyss, he felt something he had never experienced before. Powerlessness. The Vorkai war doctrine was built upon overwhelming force, calculated strikes, and the absolute certainty of victory. But how could one fight an enemy that did not follow the laws of war? How could one counter something that did not behave like anything the galaxy had ever encountered? The human fleet was not engaging in battle. It was consuming them. Across the coalition's command channels, voices turned to screams. Ships that should have been impervious to conventional weapons were vanishing, their massive hulls swallowed by forces the Vorkai could not comprehend. No impact, no explosion, just erasure. Threxazun's personal guards stood motionless beside him, their exoskeletal bodies rigid with an instinctive fear. Even they, warriors bred for war, did not know how to respond. Then, the voice returned. "You should have let us go." Elias Carter. His tone was not triumphant, not gloating. It was cold, factual, like the voice of an executioner delivering a sentence. A new warning flashed across the Vorkai flagship's central interface. Systems were failing, not from external attacks, but from something deeper. The very fabric of their technology was being rewritten in real time. Shields flickered out of existence. Weapons lost their targeting parameters. Engines refused to obey their commands. "High Chancellor!" an officer choked, barely managing to hold himself together. We don't know how to fight this." A realization struck Threxazun like a physical blow. They weren't just losing, they had already lost. The Coalition had believed itself untouchable. They had judged humanity as reckless, undisciplined, a civilization too dangerous to be left unchecked. They had sentenced them to extinction, expecting compliance, expecting desperation. Instead, they had created something new, something beyond the limits of understanding. Another wave of darkness surged forward. The Vorkai flagship, the symbol of the Coalition's supremacy, trembled as its structure was pulled apart, not by weapons, but by something far worse, by the void itself. The abyss had come to collect its due. And on Zarathis Prime, in the grand chamber of the assembly, the leaders of the known galaxy watched in horror as their empire collapsed. Not to rebellion, not to war, but to something they could not begin to fathom. And then, as the last defenses of the Coalition crumbled, Carter's voice rang out one final time. "You should have let us go." The war was over before it had truly begun. What should have been the ultimate display of the Galactic Coalition's strength had turned into its greatest failure. In the span of minutes, not hours, not days, an empire that had stood for millennia had collapsed beneath the weight of something it did not, and perhaps could not, understand. The battlefield was silent. No wreckage floated among the stars. No fires burned in the void. The ships that had once formed an impenetrable wall around, Earth had simply ceased to exist, swallowed whole by an enemy that had rewritten the very rules of engagement. The Galactic Coalition, a force that had once dictated the fate of worlds with the mere stroke of a decree, was no more. Its fleets, once thought invincible, had been erased. On Zarathis Prime, the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly stood in stunned silence. The air, once thick with the arrogance of rulers who had believed themselves untouchable, now felt hollow, emptied of the certainty that had defined the Coalition's rule. The screens before them, once filled with tactical data and fleet movements, were dark. Their transmissions had been severed. The unthinkable had happened. And in that silence, the rulers of the galaxy sat frozen in their gravity-suspended thrones, struggling to comprehend the scale of what had just unfolded. For centuries, the Coalition had operated under the belief that it was absolute, that no force, no rebellion, no species could ever stand against it. They had maintained order through fear, through overwhelming technological superiority. They had watched civilizations rise and fall, dictated which species would be allowed to thrive and which would be cast into oblivion. Humanity had been just another problem to be solved. A dangerous, reckless species that refused to fall in line. A species that had dared to resist, that had dared to push back against the ordained hierarchy of the cosmos. And so they had made their decision: extinction, not through war, not through diplomacy. A simple decree, a single sentence issued in the halls of power, spoken as if it were nothing more than a logistical decision. Humanity was to be erased. But what they had not understood, what they could not have understood, was that humanity did not break. Humanity did not kneel. When backed into a corner, when stripped of everything, humanity did not surrender. It evolved. And now the Coalition was gone. Not defeated, not conquered, are gone. The planets that had once been the foundations of its rule stood defenseless, their fleets erased from existence. The great warships of the Vorkai, the dreadnoughts of the Thal Shah, the command centers of the Kithari, all gone, as if they had never existed. And at the center of it all, the human fleet remained, untouched, unchallenged. The abyss loomed in the void, its presence less that of a ship and more of a force, a reminder of what had been lost and what had taken its place. From the shattered remains of their empire, the rulers of the surviving worlds watched, their minds caught in a paradox of disbelief and terror. They had always viewed humanity as primitive, as dangerous, as unstable. They had seen them as a species that could not be trusted with power. Now the truth was clear. They had never truly understood humanity. And now it was too late. Then the final message came. A simple phrase. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. It was not a threat, it was not a demand, it was a statement of fact. The message echoed across the stars. It reached the farthest edges of the surviving worlds, transmitted through systems that should not have been accessible. Some species recoiled in horror, realizing what they had provoked. Others understood the weight of those words. The coalition had believed itself to be the pinnacle of power, the ultimate arbiters of existence. They had sought to erase humanity. Instead, they had forced them to become something else, something the universe had never seen before, and something it might never see again. No further attacks came. There was no need. The message had been delivered. The galaxy had changed. The very fabric of interstellar civilization had been rewritten in an instant. The balance of power no longer rested in the hands of the coalition. In truth, it no longer rested in the hands of anyone. For humanity had not just won a war. They had transcended it. And then, as silently as they had arrived, the fleet of the forgotten vanished, slipping back into the unknown, leaving nothing behind but the echoes of their final words, a warning that would haunt the galaxy for all eternity. Humanity had crossed a threshold from which there was no return, and perhaps the galaxy would never see them again.